Hello YouTube, this is Neon, and today the title of my talk is going to be Dorothy Williams. Dorothy Williams was an African, or is? I don't know. She in jail now. She in prison. African-American woman serial killer, and she really is fascinating amongst serial killers, and even amongst serial killer women. She's not the only African-American woman serial killer, but I'll go into more details shortly. I have a funny story that's sort of tangentially related to her. When I was living in the Skid Row Housing Trust in the Skid Row district of Los Angeles, I was watching TV in the communal room because I was too poor to have my own TV in my room. And I was watching The Most Evil, and they had the sort of the women's edition, and they were covering all of these different women serial killers, some of whom I had read about briefly, but that was it. During this documentary, I got to see and see the crime scenes, listen to the medical examiners, listen to the prosecution and the law enforcement, and see some crime scenes, and it just really hit home. Wow, there are women out there who are serial killers and have killed a lot of people. I'm African American. The manager of our building, whose name is Tanya. Hello Tanya, if you watching, I hope you will. I had told her about this, just the shock of some of these women had killed numerous people. And she was like, yeah, Neon, there's some evil people out there. And she was like, hey, Neon, they was all white too, weren't they? I was like, yeah, Tanya, they was. They was all white. There's one unpretty stereotype that don't apply to our community. Our women, they're not serial killers. And then I learned about Dorothy Williams. So America's Most Wanted had covered another African American woman serial killer that they were trying to catch. I don't know if they ever caught her. But back to Dorothy Williams. She struggled with crack addiction, I believe, most of her adult life. And she committed her murders, the ones she was convicted of, in the late 80s. She was a career criminal and really depended on robbery to get money for her crack addiction. She would prey on the elderly. People who oftentimes were completely and utterly defenseless. Like so many serial killers, she was described as someone who would stalk the projects, particularly where there were lots of very elderly people, and she would look for the weakest, the oldest, people who were alone, people who didn't have any friends. She would really scope out the place and look for people that she could prey upon. And she would rob them. She would manipulate. She would claim that she was being sent there by the county as a nurse to help. And some of these beautiful elderly people did have nurses, and some of them let her in, and she would bully them, sometimes beat them up, and she would rob them. And that escalated. She is said to have gone from robbery to prostitution to murder. And she robbed a lot of elderly people, as I understand it. She was very strong, and she was very able to subdue and overwhelm these elderly angels that she preyed on. She was convicted of killing 3 people. She had choked to death a 79-year-old man with his own belt. She stabbed to death a 64-year-old man, and those were her 2 first victims. Didn't have a clue as to who had killed them, and these crimes went unsolved for some years. The one thing that sets her aside, just like it sets aside some hitmen and some hit women and some people who rob and murder into the class of also as serial killer, is the fact that they tend to be They tend to enjoy the killing, they're sadistic, and they kill when they don't need to kill. That was the case with Dorothy Williams. Again, she killed very defenseless, precious angels. I believe she was caught in 1989, where she, after having murdered her third victim. Her third victim's name was Mary Harris. This precious angel, I'm just going to choose to call her a precious angel. Well, I know she in heaven right now, so there it is. She was 97 years old, and Mary Harris killed her. She claimed to be a nurse, and once she got into the home, she pretty much pushed her onto her bed and strangled her to death with her own scarf. I believe she got out of that $2, and she stole this lady's stereo system so that she could hawk it. And of course, this lady lived in the housing projects as well. Fortunately, someone saw her, another elderly person saw her leaving this elderly woman's home with a box and knew she didn't belong there. So they were able to get eyewitnesses, and in addition to the fact that her fingerprints were all over the place because she ransacked this lady's house as well. And that was her MO for robbery, and as well as for robbery murder. It was all to feed her crack addiction. I knew a guy who was a boxer. He was so handsome. He was gorgeous. And he did fight for prize money, but they were small purses. He wasn't like professional. But he had decided he was going to kill his brother-in-law. I lived in a home with all of these folks. His brother-in-law, to my knowledge, was a very evil person. And even though this boxer could have physically killed him, he decided he wanted to shoot him with a sawed-off 12 gauge, I think it was. I think is what it's called. And he got drunk throughout the day. And he's talking about killing this person, and I'm watching this. This is my biological father's then girlfriend's adult children. I'm 18, right? Just out of high school. And I'm watching all of this, and I'm watching him get drunk and talking about how he's going to shoot the guy, and I'm witnessing him working up the nerve to shoot his brother-in-law by getting drunk to do so. And he did miss, thank goodness, when he did shoot at him. But it looked like it was a cannon fire when he shot the gun. It was crazy. Just like whoosh. So I know that some people actually do want to do evil things, and they use drugs or alcohol to work up to it. So I don't agree that, somehow that excuses her, and neither does the law. She was caught after having killed Mary Harris. I believe that by this time, either Illinois had computerized their fingerprint system, or by this time she had been caught having committed another crime, and they had her fingerprints in whatever system they had. So she was very shortly after killing Mary Harris, she was caught. And an astute detective had realized that there were other murders. There were this very similar MO where they're robbed, they're killed, and somebody's fingerprint is all over the place because they ransacked their apartment. And that's where they found that Mary Harris was this beautiful victim. But Dorothy Williams, the evil serial killer, that's where they found that she had killed these two men previously. She claimed to have entered their home with their permission to sell herself to them, and that they didn't want to pay. The first person, who was 64 years old, she claims that when she insisted that he pay, he refused, pulled a knife on her. She took the knife out and took the knife from him and stabbed him to death. That's what she claims. The 79-year-old gentleman, she claims that when he didn't want to pay, she just had a fit of anger and strangled him with her own with his own belt. But none of that mess was going to fly with Mary Harris. There was no reason for her to kill Mary Harris. Mary Harris could not have put up any resistance to Dorothy Williams. And some people believe she killed her just because she wanted to kill a precious angel. Mary Harris, by the way, she was 97 years old, but she was healthy. Doctors told her, you're going to live to be 100. But her life was snuffed out early. She had family who loved her, and her daughter would visit her and sometimes take her shopping or see if she needed any help cleaning anything. And just, she had people that were there for her, but unfortunately not that particular time that Dorothy Williams showed up. So myself and many other people in law enforcement were particularly angered at the fact that she killed this 97-year-old woman. So senseless and so unnecessary. She could have robbed her. You know, she had robbed many, many people where she didn't kill them. Why she escalated and chose to begin to kill, who knows? Who knows? But this precious lady, and the two gentlemen, I mean, these are precious lives. Just very, very, very tragic. She did kill only African Americans, so she's very typical in that sense. Most serial killers kill their own race. There are exceptions. She was not an exception. Most male serial killers kill by strangulation. Most women serial killers kill by poisoning. However, both men and women serial killers kill in a plethora of methods. Those are just the most common methods for men and women. So in that respect, she was kind of unusual as well, that she strangled her victims or stabbed her victims, being as that's not as common a way for women serial killers. So those are the things that are most fascinating about her. She initially got the death sentence. It was commuted to life without the possibility of parole. And it was her murder of Mary Harris that, I don't know if I said this already. If I did, I'm sorry. But it was the murder of Mary Harris that resulted in her getting the death penalty. Even though it was reduced to, it was commuted, I guess, to life without the possibility of parole. So she will die in prison for her murders. And she got life for both of the gentlemen that she killed. So that is the bulk of my talk about this particular serial killer and why I find her fascinating. Obviously, regardless of really age, race, sexual orientation, religion, economic status, whatever, you know, there is this tiny, tiny fraction of any population where there are serial killers, and that includes black women. There's this tiny possibility of women, of women of whatever race that can as well be serial killers. Evil does not discriminate. Anybody could be evil. Just ask Dorothy Williams. So, oh, and I think I said this already. She was very strong, and she easily could overpower, particularly the elderly women, but the elderly men as well. So there was no reason for her to kill. So if you like this video, if you find it fascinating, if you are in love with me, because I am with you, then please like, subscribe, share, comment, commercials, recommend my videos to one of your friends. Do one or more of those things. Thank you. Best wishes.